Our top focus on WION at this hour. Chinese President Xi Jinping has spoken with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky over phone. This is the first phone call between the two leaders since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Beijing has sought to appear neutral on the Russian invasion, but it has never hidden its close ties to Moscow or even condemned the invasion. According to reports, Xi told Zelensky that China would send special representatives to Ukraine and also hold talks with all parties seeking peace. Our next report gets you all details. Take a look.
Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke by telephone on Wednesday with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky for the first time since Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. Zelensky, in a tweet, described a, quote, long and meaningful call with Xi. In Beijing, a government official said China would send special representatives to Ukraine to hold talks with all parties in an effort to end the crisis. China has repeatedly tried to present itself as a potential intermediary between Moscow and Kyiv. But Ukraine's Western allies have viewed Beijing's diplomatic overtures with heavy skepticism. Xi is the most powerful world leader to have refrained from denouncing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He made a state visit to Russia last month, a sign of support for Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin. Since February, Xi has promoted a 12-point peace plan for Ukraine, one greeted with caution by Kyiv. But Zelensky has been careful not to appear to reject Chinese offers outright. Ukrainian officials have long been calling on Beijing to use its influence in Russia to help end the war. China says it is positioned to help mediate the conflict because it has not taken sides publicly. U.S. National Security Council spokesperson Jack Kirby last month said that if Beijing wanted it to be taken seriously, it needed to call for Russia to pull back from Ukrainian territory.
We encouraged President Xi to advocate for this exact essential key point, which must include the withdrawal of Russian forces from sovereign Ukrainian territory consistent with the UN Charter.
The White House on Wednesday welcomed the talks between Zelensky and Xi, but Kirby said it was too soon to tell whether it would lead to a peace deal. Western countries warn China's 12-point peace proposal for Ukraine is too vague, offers no concrete path out of the war, and could be used by Putin to promote a truce that would leave his forces in control of occupied territory.
For more on this, we have with us Charles A. Kupchan, who is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and professor of international affairs at Georgetown University. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, Mr. Charles.
It's good to be with you.
Right now, how do you assess the latest phone call between Zelensky and Xi Jinping? It's pertinent to note here that this is the first phone call between both the leaders since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine.
I think it's part of a Chinese effort to become a bigger player on the diplomatic stage. The Chinese played an important role in getting Saudi Arabia and Iran to establish relations a couple of months ago. Then Xi Jinping goes to Moscow. The Chinese put out a 12-point peace plan for Ukraine. And now today, Zelensky talks to Xi about that peace plan and about the way forward. I don't think that we're witnessing here a real, sincere Chinese effort to broker a peace deal. I think Xi Jinping, for now, will continue to support Putin and provide Putin the diplomatic and political cover he needs to continue the war. At some point, Xi may become an important diplomatic player because he does have leverage over Putin and may press him at some point to end the war and move to diplomacy. But we're not there yet. Right. And I think the call with Zelensky was more symbolic than substantive.
But I was just coming to that, Mr. Charles, that the call comes as China tries to position itself as a mediator in the ongoing war in Ukraine. And like you mentioned, China had already proposed a 12-point peace plan. What can you tell us about that idea from the Chinese government? And do you think that China can actually be an honest broker at this point?
No, I don't think they can be an honest broker. And that's because the Chinese have decided to side with the Russians and have in some ways endorsed the Russian invasion. And in many respects, I think that Xi Jinping has made a Russian defeat almost impossible for China to accept, because Xi is now in many respects in the same boat as Putin. And so China doesn't have the ability to be an even broker. And I would point out that the first point in their 12-point peace plan is to stand by and defend sovereignty and territorial integrity. Well, if that's the case, then the Chinese need to press Putin to honor Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty and to get out. But that's clearly not what the Chinese are doing. And that's, again, why I think that this diplomatic push is much more show than it is substance.
Right, Mr. Charles, but we do know that Zelensky had earlier expressed his willingness to talk to Xi Jinping. Do you think that Ukraine wants to improve its relations with China, a country that has clearly not condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine till now?
Well, I think that it's better to talk than not to talk. And there has been very little contact between Ukraine and Russia, between Ukraine and China. The United States has almost no real strategic dialogue with the Russians or the Chinese. So everything else being equal, yes, let's have Zelensky and Xi talk to each other. And it may be that something good does come out of it down the road. And I also think it's important for Ukraine to look beyond the war and to think about having good trading and diplomatic relations with China. So the call may help with that outcome in the long run. But right now, we're really focused on the beginning of the Ukrainian offensive, their effort to take back more land from Russia in the coming months. I don't get the sense that this call today has any impact upon what is likely to be a pretty bloody summer.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Charles, for joining us on WION and sharing your insights with us. We'll, of course, be tracking this story very closely. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.